afternoon, everyone. I labeled this talk, Let's Do It Right This Time, because I've been giving a lot of thought and to the observations I've been making as we try to transform our systems and our services. And we're all really excited about what's going on out there. And we have a right to be excited. The Employment First movement, which is here in the United States, we have over 25 states that have an Employment First policy. That is great news. And we have lots of other states who are interested or moving in that direction. We have an international Employment First movement, as evidenced here by this very conference. We have the U.S. Department of Justice hassling states and telling them, guess what? These people need to not only live in the community, they need to work in the community, and if you don't want to do it, we're going to make you do it. That's pretty cool from my view of the world. We have CMS, who pays for all this stuff. Who's one of the biggest funders out there, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services here in the United States. One of the biggest funders says, if you want our bucks, if you want our dollars, guess what? You need to focus a lot more on employment. So that is really, really all good news, and we should applaud that, and we should be happy about that. But I also think, as Dr. Martin Luther King once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And there are some things that matter that I feel very strongly that we cannot be silent about in terms of transformation of systems and what we're seeing actually happening out there on the ground. Because I will tell you, I am really scared that we're going to screw this up and that we're already screwing this up. Because our dream is to replace segregated settings, segregated facilities, people not working, with people in real jobs, with real pay out there in the community. That's our dream. That's what we're trying to work towards. Excuse me. That's what we think is going to happen. But what we're replacing many of these antiquated services and old service models with, in some cases, I'm not sure a whole lot better. And in some cases, they might be worse. And again, we have got to be really careful as we go about this process. Because I think we messed it up before when we created shelter workshops because we thought that was the right thing for people. We didn't recognize how capable they were. But let's not do that again. Because the last thing we want to do is tear down another system, another program, and have to rebuild it again. That's a disservice to all of us, the advocates, but most importantly, that is a disservice to people with disabilities, an absolute disservice to them. So we have got to do this right this time. So what am I talking about? What am I talking about specifically? Well, we've got programs out there that have been told or forced to or are trying to expand employment. But instead of going out there and working with individuals and going out there in the general workforce and trying to place them in regular jobs at typical pay, they jump to, basically, as I see them, easy solutions, or what they see as easy solutions. Because they go along with this. They say, as this quote says, there are always two choices, two paths to take. One is easy, and its only reward is that it's easy. But they jump to what they see as the easy solution. Oh, let's start a business. Let's start a social enterprise, which the agency will own, and will employ people, we'll bring people from the community in there. Or let's integrate our workshop. That's the new one. We'll integrate our workshop. So let's do that. That's a great way. So because if the state's telling us we can't have segregation anymore, if the Department of Justice is telling us we can't have segregation anymore, okay, we'll do that. And of course, there's also Ability One, NISH, as many people know, where people work on federal contractors here in the United States, and 75% of those people who are under those contracts have to have disabilities. And they go out in the community, and they sometimes they do that work in a facilitator program, but they're still going out there in a group of people with disabilities, which is still, in my view, very segregating, very stigmatizing. And similarly, enclaves, the same thing. Programs jump to, we're just going to create a bunch of enclaves and have people go out into the community. Again, that group of people with disabilities, just out there as a group, maybe, and the claim always is, well, they're integrated. They're out there doing landscaping work, or they're out there doing cleaning out there in the community and interacting with customers. Or even when a lot of these providers build their own businesses, they're quote-unquote social enterprise. We're going to start a coffee shop, and the community will come in, and that's our integration. And to me, that's nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. And I will say this, and I will say this very loud, and I will say this very clearly. Labor markets that are set up for people with disabilities, they are inherently flawed, they are inherently stigmatizing, and we've got to stop doing it. Okay? They are created for people with disabilities, and I don't care how much you change them. I don't care how much you change them or tweak them or add people without disabilities to them. They are inherently flawed. They are not part of the economic mainstream as I see it, not part of the mainstream society. The other thing we keep seeing now, this is another new thing, that, okay, all these programs are going to create training programs. We're not going to train people for jobs, which is, I thought, what shelter workshops were supposed to do anyway, but they never did. They just sat there for the rest of their lives. So the new thing is we're going to create a training program, and I will give you a concrete example. A provider in Massachusetts, very well-intended, good people, but they noticed around their area that there was lots of hotels. So they set up a hotel room in the basement of their building with a bed and a bathroom so they could teach people how to clean hotel rooms. Instead of saying, wait a second, first off, you got hotels all surrounding you. Why don't you go out there and actually train people on site, like Support Employment says? Or if you've got people who really need to build some skills in the area, go out and find out who really want to do that kind of work, who truly want to do that kind of work. Go out and find a local hospitality training program at the community college or wherever that might be. Include them in that. Don't create a separate training program where, okay, we're going to train everybody for this kind of job in our segregated facility. And oh, by the way, we don't know a darn thing about that business and really know what it's all about, and we're going to train people on it anyway. And again, that is not acceptable. That's not what we should be doing with folks, and that's not what we should be doing with our public dollars. The other issue is, and then I get in these ridiculous discussions, and I refuse to participate in them anymore, when people want to sit around and define employment. When I hear those discussions, I want to run from the room. Because in my view, and some of you might remember this, Potter Stewart, one of our Supreme Court justices, said, in terms of, he was talking about pornography, he said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And that's the way it should be in terms of employment. We know it when we see it. We know what a typical job is. People working side by side in a regular workplace in the community, like my son does, like my brothers do, like my sisters do, like I do. Out there getting a paycheck, getting benefits, the whole 9 yards. We know it when we see it. And we create this artificial stuff. We create these labor markets. We create these alternatives. Now, I will say this. We are not there yet. We are not there yet as a system in terms of probably doing away with all these things immediately. But we at least need to start moving in that direction. And we need to, if we're going to do some of these alternatives, which most of which I don't agree with, or all of which I don't agree with, at least say if we're going to do an enclave, say it is a compromise. We recognize it for the huge compromise that it is, because we haven't figured out yet where these folks can work, but we should keep moving towards that. So we should recognize that. The other thing I'm going to say, and I feel this very strongly, we have got to stop people with disabilities working for these service providers that are also supporting them. It is an inherent conflict of interest. They are providing the people a paycheck. They're also supposed to support them in getting a job, okay? To me, that's wrong. And I know there's lots of service providers, probably in this room, definitely at this conference, who do use that very model. And again, I don't think we can get rid of that tomorrow, but we have got to start saying that as a policy and practice issue, it is not a good idea, because that is a conflict of interest. You can't do both well. And ultimately, whose needs are going to get met? Are going to get met as the service provider is operating a business. Plus, we co-op people doing that. We said, yeah, you should work for our business. Instead of going out there and getting a regular job in the community, work in our enclave, work in our little store, work whatever we set up. Oh, yeah, that's good. And we co-op parents with the same thing. So I really feel very strongly it is time to move away from that. And we've got to place priority on that. So that's about the employment side of things. And what I'm also seeing out there on a day-to-day basis is major concerns over non-work programs. One of the big issues here in the United States, and I'm guessing internationally, is the growth of non-work community programs. So people who are supposedly going out in the community but not doing work. Now, in my view, first off, a non-work program should be the wraparound for when people aren't working, people who need some kind of structure that they get when they're not working. But work should still be the primary driver. It shouldn't be just this choice. Do you want to work or do you want the non-work program? But also, what we're seeing there is some of the same problems. We have groups of people with disabilities, for example, and I saw this recently, spending time in classroom-type settings. I was in a provider recently that got rid of their shelter workshop. So great. I'm so glad to see they did that. Then I go into their building. They have people, first off, doing exercise and exercise equipment in their building. I'm like, if they need to exercise, why aren't they at the Y down the street? Why aren't they at the health club? This is nonsense. They had a classroom where these were people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, 40 and 50 years old, and they were spending time discussing what was a verb and what was a noun. And this is what staff were doing with them. You laugh because it's so sad, though. It is so true. It's like, what have we created? And literally this thought went through my mind. These people were better off in a shelter workshop. At least they were active and they were earning money. I was scared that I had that thought, but it was very true. So they replaced something. And yeah, once in a while they go out to work, and once in a while they do stuff in the community, but it's not the vast majority of their time. And also, what I also see on this is, again, where these programs say we've got to figure out something for these people to do. So what they do is they will say, well, let's create a disability drama group or a disability music group, and we'll go out and perform in the community, and that's our community integration. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so stigmatizing. If somebody wants to be in a drama group, find a local community drama group. There's plenty of them out there, and support them in being part of that if that's what they want to do. If they want to sing, find a local choir, find a local music group, find something they want to be at, and support them doing that, instead of creating, again, another artificial community that's out there. Another thing that I've seen is, for example, and I think in some ways this kind of example is not inherently bad, but let's get a community garden, and that's what everybody will do. We'll go to the community garden a couple times a week. If a group of folks want to start a community garden and do that, that's great if that's where their heart is at, but that shouldn't be the one activity everybody does together as a large group, because isn't that cute, all those cute little people with disabilities out there in the garden? Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? Or another example I saw more recently, where the provider said, we're going to start our own food bank, and then people are going to stock the shelves, and we'll go around and collect food from the community, and then we'll distribute it. Isn't that nice? I'm thinking, no. If somebody wants to work in a food bank as a volunteer, that's great. Plenty of food banks in Massachusetts. I can assure you that we would love the help. Let's support them going out there. If that's what they want to do, if that is something they want to volunteer, if that speaks to them personally, not because that's the activity that the provider decided that day. So it's really, really concerning as we see these things. And these are good people, well-intended. They are trying to do the right thing. But what we really need to be collectively, I'm talking about the federal government, I'm talking about state government, I'm talking about service providers, I'm talking about individuals with disabilities, I'm talking about families, all of us, technical assistance people. We need to be really, really clear about what is an acceptable outcome and how we get there. And we get there, obviously, through individual planning, through listening to people and acting on their interests and acting on what they want to do. And be laser-focused on that, laser-focused. And part of that is being laser-focused on real jobs with real wages in the community. And the basis for our decision-making all the time must be, what if the person doesn't have a disability? How do we act? Would we create these artificial communities? No. What would we do if the person didn't have a disability? That should always be the basis of every decision that we're making, that a person with a disability is making. And yes, we may have to tweak, we may have to add supports, we may have to change things a little bit, we may have to make some compromises along the way, but we have to make sure that we are sticking to that inherent basis of how we are making those decisions. And all of us, collectively, need to be diligent and vigilant in terms of making sure that happens, that we are focused on what we're really looking for, real jobs for real pay in the community. And all of this starts with the fundamental belief in the capabilities of people with disabilities. If we don't believe that they can be in the community and be out there in the mainstream society, we're going to never get there. And they've got to believe that themselves. And their family members need to believe that. Everybody needs to believe that. But that's not the only piece. We need to believe, and I truly believe this, that society is also capable of supporting and assisting them if they get the chance. Society is very much capable of that, but we have to give them the chance. So as I end this, I just think we need to all bear this in mind, that we've got a chance here. We've got a huge chance, a huge opportunity to really change the lives of people with disabilities, change our society, change the world. But we've got to really make sure that this time we do it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.